Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. Our guest today is Laura Malcolm. Laura, you ready to be great today?
I sure am.
Laura Malcolm is the founder CEO of Give InKind, a modern platform for coordinating support through major life events. After experiencing the tragic loss of her first child, Laura took her 10 years of product management experience and set out to create an easier way for friends, families, and communities to come together when it's needed most. In 2016, Give InKind was launched, combining a care calendar, Wishlist, crowdfunding, and updates to one aggregated support tool. Laura bootstrapped Give InKind for 3 years, taking her family across the world twice to save money and work with Give InKind's offshore development team, and has since raised $3.8 million from top investors in Seattle. Laura, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it. So Laura, first thing, let's talk about product management. Like, what is it? Is it product management, product development? Is it all the same thing? And how does that work?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I didn't expect that I would go into product management. My degree's in psychology, and people have told me, like, well, what does a psychology degree have to do with being a product manager in tech? And the answer is everything, right? When you are the product manager, you are thinking about what makes how people interact with your product, what makes them compelled to move through it, what drives that experience, right? And then the role as product management, you also become that central hub of coordinating engineering and design. And I think that I think that CEOs with product management backgrounds, I'd be interested to know the statistics. I think that it is a mini CEO version, I think, of your own experience or feature or product within a larger suite of products. And
so how did that fit happen for psychology to product management? Were you already interested in tech, even though you were taking the psychology classes, or just always a matter, man, I got a psychology degree. It's kind of a BS degree. I'm having trouble finding a job. Maybe like do something else.
So it was an interesting transition. I didn't expect to move into tech. My father had a long career on tugboats, and then he had a transition later in his life into tech. He had always, sort of geeked out on computers, and we had computers when I was young. He programmed handheld computers out on the boats, and then he made a transition in his 30s into first being an entrepreneur, and then in tech, and then really developing this long career in tech. And when he passed away, when he was 50, I was in my early 20s. I had my degree, and I was working as a nanny. I had a long past life as a sort of high-end celebrity nanny, but that wasn't, going to be forever. And after he died, I realized that I needed to make a change, and I found a job listing for a content manager at a little startup in Santa Monica, where I was living. I'm from here, but was living in California. And I just wrote to them, and I said, I believe in this company you're doing. It was this eco shopping website, and I'd love to learn. And I've been passionate about technology. And I wrote this, like, here are all the things that I think could be improved in your website. And I had no experience or business doing that. And I got that job, and I never looked back. I just went all the way up from product manager to director of product, or a role in project management, sort of touching all those things until we decided to start Give InKind.
Yeah, off subject, I have a cousin that lives in Burbank. I've been like 2 or 3 times. I just love Santa Monica Pier. The vibe, the people, it's just such a great environment there.
The beach is, that part of LA is amazing. I mean, LA gets a lot of flack, as it should, especially from us here in the Northwest. But I lived by the beach for all of my time in LA, and that was definitely a more Northwest vibe.
Yeah.
It allowed me to do things like, ride my bike to work every day. I didn't have a car for many years. I just rode my bike everywhere, and it was pretty nice. And, I had enough vitamin D, which we just don't here.
No, I mean, like, I think I saw in the news where, like, we've had 5 hours over 70 degrees. And it was crazy. It said, we used to have 150 hours. It's not like 150 hours. That's not even a week, So
no.
Yeah, if you're gonna live for a few days, you need to be on vitamin D or pills or something, right?
Well, we're gonna get it this weekend, the heat, and everyone's gonna complain.
I know, yeah. So back to tech. So you were a female tech back in the day, so to speak. And it was always talking about diversity in tech. Females have a hard time. From your point of view, has it been getting better, or is it still pretty bad.
Oh man, well, now I look at it a lot more on the founder lens. So are women still underrepresented in tech? Absolutely. And that certainly, I think that any other woman in tech will tell you that we're very often used to being the only one in the room, the only one at the table. And I think there's disproportionate roles that women have or tend to go up the ladder in, right? Marketing, more soft skills, less engineers. We know that we need more women in tech, and that there's I don't know if what the data says about how more of a focus on STEM in schools and those sorts of pipelines are working out. We know that there's incredible organizations that are doing work to get more young women interested in engineering. Certainly we know that female founders are disproportionate and get severely disproportionate amounts of funding, of course, even being more than some other underrepresented groups of founders. But no, it's still skewed. I don't know whether that is getting better or worse.
So I think the problem starts here, and you agree or disagree. And I think, hopefully I get these numbers correct as close as I can. I read somewhere where like in elementary school, like 85-90% of females or little girls are like love STEM, engineering, science, but it drops down like maybe 10-50% in high school. So like, how do we stop that drop? It's like, I'm guessing it has to be societal pressures, you shouldn't do that and do this, but that's just a crazy drop from like third, fourth grade, like high school. Like that's just insane, I think.
It is. And I think it's exposure to, I think, as I said, there's community organizations that I think are doing more work on the local levels that I hope will impact that. I think role models is a really important part of that, right? They need to see other women in STEM and being represented and being teachers at their schools. And and now, of course, we are given the last 3 years and everything that's gone on, and we know that women are leaving the workforce in droves, and they're leaving teaching because teaching sucks right now. And so I worry that we're losing a whole group of women leaders that could be inspiring to those next generations. And we're just worried about the kids.
I think, I think another channels too, we always talk about demographic. We don't talk enough about the urban versus rural, right? Because if you're in Seattle, you have a different advantage if you want to take career versus you live in, I don't know, some random town in the middle of Nebraska, right?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I spoke at the Goodwill of Western Washington Centennial event. And there was an incredible panelist there who's doing a bunch of tech upskilling for kids in parts of Tacoma, South Sound, where we both are. And he was talking about internet access, right? Connectivity, and how we are missing this fact that there is a fundamental, we have pushed everybody onto needing to be connected, right? Kids who had to do remote school had to go home, but in many parts of the country, right, they didn't have, there's no internet access. So you have kids sitting outside McDonald's or the library trying to get connected. So the kids, job seekers, people who need to fill out forms for anything, right? When we've put everything online. And so absolutely, is there a regional advantage or disadvantage in the ability to come up in STEM? 100%. I don't know how some kid in rural Nebraska is not only not exposed to it, but there's nowhere for them to go and develop those skills.
This is a bad example, maybe, but it's almost better, like, instead of like living in like, a random small town in Nebraska, go and be homeless for a little bit in like a big city, so you have internet access, right? And then come up like that, I wouldn't suggest no one to do that, but it's like almost like, what do you do, right?
Yeah, it's wild.
So as far as like now, there's a lot of junior developers out there. It's hard for them to find jobs, right? Because like most jobs just say 2-3 years experience, and I'll push back to them always, hey, like they should do some kind of internship or something, right? But it's hard for them to find jobs, right? What advice do you have a junior developer trying to get a job?
Oh, well, I know that there's great programs. Here locally, right? Epicotus is one that puts students through internships. It's hard and unfair because so much of this industry is gated, right? It's gated based on who you know and what paths you can wiggle up to get access to. And let's even just talk about internships, right? What a privileged thing, because people offer unpaid internships. Well, you want to know who can take an unpaid internship? Rich kids.
Yeah.
Other people can't take an internship. And so it's it's difficult. I don't I wish I had good advice for junior developers finding jobs. It seems I mean it's similar to the housing crisis, right? Where we're sort of like, well, we have hundreds of thousands of jobs and hundreds of thousands of young developers
But
don't have
somehow they're not
jobs,
matching up, you know.
and yet somehow we cannot make the connections. Who I feel really terrible for right now are the junior devs who, are being impacted in sort of entry level and experience roles. Let's just talk about the tech industry and the sort of crash that's happening right now. Following these kids who got their job offers rescinded, their first job offer out of college, their visa sponsorship.
That is like so horrible.
It's a disaster.
It's beyond horrible. I mean,
mm-hmm.
It's like amazing. Like someone posted I'm on TikTok, like some person did a thing video on TikTok. When you care more about your Super Bowl ad than paying your employees, right? Hashtag Coinbase,
Yeah.
But they're not the only company, right? So
well, and they've been, and I'm in this camp of like, I started my first tech job in 2009. So right in the first crash, sort of coming out of it. Everybody who has entered the market since then has been thinking about, free perks and everything in the tech world. So you have these kids who've been watching this for 10 years, right? All of high school and college.
So they're like, it's my turn now.
You're going to go into tech and you're going to get all these perks and you're going to go make $300,000 a year. And now it's uncomfortable here for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, right? It's just, I don't know, it's craziness. So product management, that's a tech job. You really don't. So product management is the same as like quality assurance, or it's like you're like overseeing devs. Like what's the day to day?
Yeah, it's more, you can be. I think there's a spectrum of technical and non-technical product managers. I would call myself a pretty non-technical product manager. But you still have to speak some level of tech. But there's a lot of product managers who have engineering backgrounds, right? They know how to code. So I think it depends on the product that you're working on. If you're working on a highly technical product, then you are going to need to be more technical. But, the process in product management, depending on, I'm make some gross generalizations here, right? Is that you are that hub in the middle of the wheel and you are taking everything from a feature, a website, a new app, and basically, it's not dissimilar from a project manager, but your job isn't just sort of pushing things.
So those are two different things then?
They are two different things. But it's, how is this going to make money? What is it going to be? It's almost everything that you're thinking about as a founder, right? A product manager is doing on a smaller scale because they're responsible for making sure that people can use the product. But you don't have to worry about how customers are going to come to it. It's more like once the customers are here, if you're working with marketing, how am I going to make sure that the users have the best experience? How am I analyzing, each step that they take? You're working with a designer. You could say, hey, I want to test this button being orange or being blue. And then, your designer might be coming back with, here's the shades of blue that you can use.
So that's a great point. Talk about the points of having at least a decent designer. So many people don't realize how important it is, right?
Well, I'm a little biased. My husband is Give InKind's designer. And again, designer is probably shortchanging, but he left, 20 years doing ads for all of the big companies, and then wanted to leave sort of advertising to work on our startup and help people do good things instead of, just spend more time on their iPhones. Design is incredibly important. It instills confidence. I think that if you go to a website and you have the same company with the same value prop and the same pricing, and one of their sites is designed well and one is not, right? You're going to trust the one that's designed well.
Yeah, it's not even close either.
No, we're captured by design and thoughtful design. And it's so interesting when you really spend time in a designer's process. A good designer should be thinking through the feelings that different things evoke, right? Why do we use this color? Why do we use this font? What does it mean? And it's those little touches that I think a good designer. But now design has really expanded, right? And so it's important when you were thinking about getting design for your company or your website or your brand, right? There's those skills have evolved so that we now know that there are specific product designers and they're really, focused on user experience, and there's visual designers and they're thinking about your brand and your colors and your marketing campaigns. And those can be different skill sets. It's something that I think we're seeing sort of evolving over time.
I remember when I first like doing my startup, and I had a designer working with me, and they're like, I like the color blue. Well, what number blue? What do you mean, what number blue? Yeah, I think RBG color is this number, this number. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, this like blew my mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, what in the world is going on here, right? I just want blue. Is this blue, that blue, this blue, this, psychological stuff. So, oh my goodness.
You didn't know?
No, it's craziness. Are you still involved with Female Founders Alliance?
I am. I'm going to an event tonight. It is no longer, it is has evolved from the Female Founders Alliance. So it's an incredible organization that was founded by Leslie Feinzag 5 years ago, let's call it. It started out as a Facebook group for female founders, and she had 100 founders in there to begin with, and really was a community that had great events and fireside chats and a Facebook group where people could resource with other founders, talk to other founders, other women and non-binary founders. And it's been just amazing to see what she has done over the last 5 years. It turned into raising a $10 million fund. So now, Give InKind is proud to be one of their portfolio companies alongside some other really incredible female founders and co-founders. And they're just a really powerful part of this community.
So it sounds like they're evolving. What's the purpose of what's the success metric for Female Founders Alliance?
Yeah, to increase the amount of funding that goes to female founders, which is unfortunately decreasing. Now, I think there's a lot of people who are working on this. So, this is going to be a needle that's going to take some time to move. But when Leslie started the alliance, I believe the number was 2.9%. I think that recently it's been something like 2.3%. Of venture capital dollars go to female founded companies. Now, some people want to debate like, okay, well, there's a higher percentage that go to mixed gender teams, right? So we can't say that female founders get no funding because, well, 15% of funding goes to mixed gender teams. Well, that's BS, right? There is a statistic. I'm trying to think of, I'm blanking on the person's name who just told me this recently. It's going to come to me, that more guys named Dave, it was Dave Parker. So it was Dave Parker who told me, who's a fixture here in the Seattle startup scene, that more guys named Dave get venture capital funding than female founders.
It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Is there other chapters of Female Founders Alliance, or Seattle's the only place?
It's a national organization.
Okay, so but it started here in Seattle, grew.
But it started here in Seattle, and has grown.
And didn't y'all do, or maybe you still do, like the F-bomb pitch competition or something like that?
So that's another group. So that's
something
Megan
completely different?
McNally's group is
Okay.
the F-bomb Breakfast Club, which
Okay.
was another amazing group, I believe, that has sunsetted. Nobody hold me to that post-pandemic. But that was an awesome group of Seattle business leaders that did meet here in Pioneer Square at the crack of dawn.
So there's event going on tonight. Can you talk more about it in case anyone's listening and wants to go to it?
Yeah, and I don't actually know if there's tickets left available, but there is a Graham and Walker Reconnect happening at the Amazon Spheres.
Okay.
But there's been some really amazing other startup events that have been happening and sort of starting back up here in Seattle. I can send you some notes. Marcelo Cavucci has been doing one that I went to recently. There's John Steinberg is doing founder and investor dinners. Like, it's been fun to see the events starting to come back online. I'm also a big fan of Founders Live. Did you ever go to the Founders Live?
Yeah, I was like one of the first ones to go there. Yeah.
Yeah. So those were, we pitched in, I think 2019 in the basement of Galvanize around the corner, and they've moved around a bunch since then, but it's been nice to see those events come back online in person. What's
your take on this? Like Seattle, there's so much startups have gone on, like this Founders Live, you take Tacoma, on and on and on. But sometimes like they really don't collaborate, right? Like they're like all like kind of like solid, right? Like you do Founders Live, you see the great pictures, go somewhere else. Hey, I just saw a great pitch from this company. I've never heard of them before, right?
Mhm.
So like, how is it like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's
Or am I off base?
no, you're not off base. And I don't know if it's just has to do with our, Seattle's sort of known for the Seattle freeze. And are we not that collaborative? I don't know. Maybe that's one of the things that I love so much about the Female Founders Alliance and this community of like, we know a lot of the female founders in Seattle, thanks to a tight community like that. And I don't know why Seattle startup community can be disjointed. I don't know if it's the same in the Bay. I mean, there's once upon a time, early stage founders felt like they needed to go to the Bay. They needed to be there in meeting other founders. And I know that some of those communities are popping up elsewhere. I don't know if it's the type of startup community that we have, or just the fact that we don't actually like to go out and meet people and do things unless we have to.
So here's a pet peeve of mine. It drives me crazy. Like talking about diversity and funding and stuff like that. You see all the time where like a VC would say, hey, I need to increase my diversity, my funding, blase, blase, blase. However, comma, I only meet with people I get introduction from somebody already in my network, which is probably a white person or like whatever demographic, right? That's always like, are you hearing what you're saying, right? Like, this makes no sense to me.
No, it doesn't. And it's a part of the pipeline problem for sure. I will say that, for example, Graham and Walker, the Female Founders Alliance Fund, has a pitch. They have a number of portfolio companies that have applied through a form on their website. There's an incredible fund called Overlooked Ventures in Ohio. They will not accept more.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah, a lot of people mention them.
They're really great, and but they don't take warm intros just for that reason. And it is frustrating to still see and come across investors that are really clear about the impact they want to have, just like you said, and you fit their thesis and you fit all these things, and then it's like, well, you have to find a way to me.
Yeah, I don't know you. Like, yeah.
And then people are having good conversations about the fact that first of all, that system is wrong, right? Because you're missing out on an incredible amount of talented founders and potential startups that just haven't, cracked their way into these paths. I lost my train of thought.
No worries. So what's your take on the tech scene here in Seattle, tech startup scene in Seattle? I mean, I don't think we're gonna be like the Bay Area, but we're like one of the top players, right? Of course, there's us, Austin, Boston, different places. Like I joke all the time, like, I'm from Texas, Seattle's home now. And what I'm doing is like the best place to be at, right? But then again, like you said, it seems kind of disjointed, right? What's your take on the tech startup scene here?
So it's interesting because Seattle is not a consumer venture city. So, we have very few players who invest in consumer tech. So it's very B2B, first of all. And a lot of founders are coming out of Microsoft and Amazon. And so I think that we have a lot of people with a lot of connections and these, strong backgrounds who are founding companies. We also don't have a ton of very early stage funders anymore. And it feels like something that has shifted a bit, even just since we raised our first round for Give InKind in 2019. Like there's a couple of angel groups. But as far as I know, Graham and Walker may be one of the only pre-seed funds. There's a few. Kirby Winfield has Ascend, and there's a couple others that invest in pre-seed, but not these like really strong pre-seed thesis funds here in Seattle. Front Row Partners is one, Minda and Yoko. But it's not the thriving pre-seed. It's much more sort of later stage B2B SaaS is what Seattle is really good at funding. And so it's sad to hear founders say that, they feel like they need to leave Seattle to go to the Bay to get investors interested. I wish that we had a vibrant, thriving, very early stage startup scene. I mean, we have students coming out of UW and UW Tacoma and, great computer science and engineering degrees, I think it would behoove us to invest more in the earliest stages here.
I'm probably making this up, but I think like I read somewhere here where like for every 100 VC firms a Bay Area, there's only like one here or something like that, or like I mean, it's not even close.
It's not big. We're not a leader. I mean, we have a couple of really amazing funds and investors in town, but we definitely are missing out on some very early stage.
So you brought up a good point. Like I know, like I've heard like investors say, you know, like a lot of startup firms try to get funding in Seattle and they get turned down. And investors say, well, we invest in investable startups, right? Then these same startups, I know like four off the top of my head, were like the Austin, Boston, other places, and got money like almost instantly, right? And then when the Seattle investors found out, then they want to jump on the bandwagon, right? So almost like you know, like you have to be a Series A to get PC funding here, or it's almost like they have like, you know, almost like a banker's mentality, right? Like there's no risk at all, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's the experience, right? Again, if we've created some really big, think about the companies that Seattle has grown up, right? And so I do a lot of investors also have those backgrounds, right? Coming out from years at Microsoft or Amazon. I mean, the fact is that a fund has a fiduciary responsibility to be investing in companies that they think are fund returners.
Plus, it's all just a guessing game anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe just roll the dice instead. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that pattern matching happens, which of course is perpetuating the lack of diversity in venture-backed founders. And there's some thinking that this crunch right now for funding, it is really just going to impact. It's going to impact the underrepresented founders absolutely the most, because where VCs could sort of step out of pattern matching based on some things, they could. Unfortunately, I think that it feels more risky, right, when we don't pattern match. And I think that investors are probably hedging their bets a lot right now.
So this is something that I understand. And again, I don't understand, right? An investor, like, it's not like they're more likely to invest in someone who's like failed, right? Like Jason Cavness had to start before, and they invested $5 million, but he lost the $5 million. He learned $5 million worth of lesson. Let me invest in him, right? To me, that's making logical sense. But then I'll say no to someone who like has even a better idea and more traction. But no, he hasn't done this before. Like I never understood that philosophy. I do in a way, and in a way I don't.
Yeah, I think it's that experience. So I'll make a non-tech analogy. I'm on my second marriage, and the failure of my first marriage made me such a better partner for my second marriage. First one failed. I am a better person, a better spouse. I learned so many things. And I think that's a part of what the founder journey is, right? No matter how that first one ends up, you don't, unless you were really missed the boat, right? You don't walk away not having learned anything. If you spent $5 million, hopefully over an extended period of time, you have learned so many lessons along the way that I think that those investors probably, they either watched you on that journey.
Yeah, they're probably good friends with the first investor team, something like that. Jason Cavness is this angel investor. So I listen to podcasts once in a while. He was telling a story about how he invested like $3 million in this startup, and of course they went under, lost some money. And he said the founder said over to tell him, "Hey, we're going under. We lost $3 million, but we learned so much." He was like, "Are you effing kidding me? I didn't give you money to like learn lessons. I learned like succeed, right?" So I just thought it was a funny story.
I have feelings about that guy.
Yeah. I mean, I like him. I mean, I know he rubs a lot of people wrong. He's definitely like what's the word I'm looking for? An acquired taste. Acquired taste. Yeah, I know people who like him or like they hate him for whatever reason. So you're a non-tech founder. How much of a challenge has that been? So you have some interesting workarounds, which is like very interesting what you've done.
Yeah. So it's a challenge in that, the best way to bootstrap or self-fund a company is to sit down behind a computer and code it yourself. The thing that costs the most money in starting a technology platform is the code.
I mean, with me, I think all the time, man, maybe going back in time, just learn to code, right? Maybe take a year off, learn how to code, right? Then again, then you wouldn't have made all the progress you did, blah, blah. Like it's just like it's a chicken egg thing, right? But
Yeah.
like, yeah, tech people definitely have advantage. Like there's no doubt.
Mhm. Yeah, so they, we I think my background in speaking to developers and working with developers for the decade that I did
So,
before
so
we
you
started
you know the
doing it.
language, you know different things.
Yeah, just enough to be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Just enough to know what I was asking for. That was a huge advantage. But needing to pay for every line of code written for Give InKind, I think that's probably the only real disadvantage. But there's two things you need to do with a startup, right? One is build it, and two is get people to use it. So you have to have that part. You can't just put
Yeah,
three developers in a room
everything
and
has to line up, right?
it's it's an important role. That's why a lot of companies start with a developer and a non-developer as co-founders.
Yeah. So back to the Give InKind. How long has it been in business?
6 years.
6 years. Does it seem like 6 years, or does it seem like time just flew by?
It's both every single day. Like I don't know where 6 years went, and also I can't really remember a time that we weren't working on it.
Yeah. Talk about, so you bootstrapped the first 3 years. Talk about bootstrapping. How tough that can be.
Excruciating. No, we made it work. So my husband and I, as I said, we were living in LA, and we both had two really good jobs, and we had an 18-month-old baby, and we decided we're going to do it. It's time to build Give InKind. We're tired of working on other people's, me startups and him, not a startup. And sorry, we asked the question.
About bootstrapping.
Oh, yes. And so we were trying to figure out how we were going to build it. And we started looking at dev shops in LA and realizing that there's no way we were going to be able to afford.
Yeah, it's probably like $10,000 an hour. Some
Oh my God,
craziness.
so much. It was going to be a lot of money to build. And so we decided that we would sell our house in LA that we had just bought, and that we would hire an offshore dev team. And but the way that we would save money is that we would actually pack up our family and go to Thailand to work alongside them.
So how did that save money if you're moving there? Like you have to pay for the cost to move everything there, or just a matter like saving time, being right there with them versus the cross country continent?
Well, we just took bags. So we moved there, but for 3 months.
Oh, okay.
Just to build the first version of the product.
So you got like an Airbnb or something, living in something like that, or?
Yep. So we did short term. We actually moved into a local condo. We showed up, stayed at a hotel, I think stayed at an Airbnb, and then found housing. Like you have to have a certain, to that whole adventure, you have to have a certain level of comfort with like not having all the plans figured out. So we're like, okay, well, we'll go there and we'll figure it out. That's sort of our life motto. Like we'll figure it out. And so we stayed for 3 months and had sort of thought, I'm going to build this company and then we'll get some users and then we'll raise some money and we'll be off to the races. And, I think that's what a lot of founders think. And instead we came back and found out that it's not so simple as just building it and raising money, especially not if you're, have all these other check marks against you, female founder, first time founder, all of those things. And so then we spent the next 2 years really slow growing. So just enough users, just enough more users every month to keep going, not making any money. My husband was back to doing contracts at other companies to pay the bills. And then we had another kid, and it was time to put that kid in daycare. And we really realized that our development cost was the equivalent of both kids in daycare. And so we had to choose. We couldn't afford to do both. But man, we were so close, and we just had, we didn't feel like Give InKind is what we wanted it to be, and we really needed to get out this next version of it. And so we made a choice that we would cut our expenses again by packing up 2 kids and going back to Thailand. And again, it's so cheap.
Yeah.
Like we just, for the cost of our rent in Tacoma, we were in Thailand with housing and daycare and a nanny and like all the things that we could do to be supportive, also to be working. And so we went back and came out with the next version of Give InKind, this next release. And immediately started growing the sort of, double-digit monthly growth that you need to have to be venture backable. And that's what, and I don't know if we want to get into that later, but like when we talk about venture, I've learned so much about what it means to be, to fit the box, to be venture backable. And one of them is that compound growth every month. And so we had to hit that. And that's something that I think that founders don't understand enough or take enough, like we really, if you're growing 5% every month, it's very difficult.
It's not good enough.
Investor.
Yeah.
It's not good enough. You have to be growing big numbers, 20%, 30%. And when you're starting out, the N is small. You should be able to grow 50% every month. It's only those 10 to 15% numbers are okay when you're huge, but not when you're early. So we hit the growth that we needed. We were getting a hockey stick. And at this point, we're starting to get enough users that I needed to be, we didn't have any I was customer support. Thailand is 14 hours away. So I didn't feel like I could be offline every day, but we still didn't have any money. So, so I moved my family to Mexico, to the top of the Yucatan, because then we could be on US time zones. We could still save money. And I got our first 2 investor checks from there and said, okay, we can go home. And we came home, and then we ended up raising our rounds about 4 months later.
That's such a great story. I mean, there's no doubt you're all in, right? Like there's no investor can doubt that you're all in on this. So when you tell the dev team, hey, we're gonna move to Thailand, well, they're like, why are you coming? Why are you coming here? Or they support like no one's ever been here before? What are you trying to do?
I think they were excited probably to work, I like to think to be, actually, I'm very pro remote team. But when you were building just the beginnings of that, like there's nothing like being shoulder to shoulder, being on the same time zone. And half of the development team that started with us 6 years ago is still with us today.
Nice. And what part of Thailand were you in?
In Chiang Mai.
So my wife's cousin, she has a cousin that lives in China. And so when I was in the Army in Korea, we were the 2 times, one in 07 for 2 weeks and one in 08 for 2 weeks. They live in a town called Prestonsburg, like the where I was east of Bangkok. It is a great experience, right? And like I said, it's so cheap. Like he had us like a driver for like $10 a day. It's like it was so much fun over there.
Thailand is amazing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get back. But they call it the land of smiles for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, lovely.
It's very nice. And so you still outsourcing your tech through this development team?
Yeah, we are. Yep. So we have 3 developers in Thailand and 1 in Poland. Pretty much everybody is expat. Only one of the developers in Thailand is Thai. We have a Polish developer living in Thailand and a Dutch developer living in Thailand and a Brazilian developer living in Poland. So we're a very international team.
So I've heard some people say, if you want to get VC money, you have to have tech team internally, but obviously you didn't do it that way.
No, and we didn't get any pushback at all on having a remote team. I mean, I think that if you show the product progress, if you show that, the code is good. I think that the difference is that this isn't like a big shop. We weren't, there are some big development factories, for lack of a better word, right? Around, you probably get a message from them on LinkedIn all day long.
All day
right?
long. Yep, all day long.
To help you with your development resources. This was a little different because this is our team, right? They're on our slide. Like they're full-time with us. So yes, we are still working through, we pay a firm, I guess, but the firm is our team.
Okay. So when you're starting the company, so you're the CEO of the company, right? And what's your husband's title, like role?
He's the head of design. So we actually ended up bringing on our lead developer, came on as co-founder about a year after we started. And part of that was because we were starting to talk to investors here, and we got pushback on my husband was listed as co-founder, and he has no interest in being the co-founder. He's a behind the scenes guy through and through. He was never going to come stand, at an investor pitch with me. So there was no reason for him to be a co-founder. And so we brought on our head of engineering into a co-founding role.
So you kind of answered my next question. Next question was, like when you're starting the team, you and your husband, of course, you had to know that you're going to have a hard time raising as a female CEO. Was any talk and discussion, hey, I know in reality I'm the CEO, but hey, husband, you take the title so we can get easier funding?
No, not in our
Okay.
case. No,
Okay.
not in our case. Again, there was just no, I am the face, for lack of a better
Mhm.
term. And it's so funny because I think that there's people who genuinely believe that in some ways that there's some sort of like affirmative action for founders, right? They're like, oh, you're going to be at a advantage because you're a female founder and you stand out. And that's bullshit, right? We know that that's not the case.
Talk about the points of having your like your husband, close family, close friends like supporting you. 'Cause I think so many founders like they just have to give up because like the spouse is supporting really. I mean, they say I know a lot of founders would quit because the spouse says they support them, but they really don't, right? They make snide comments, have you started a company yet? Are you successful? Or they send like job postings and stuff, They talk about the importance of that.
Well, it's, our situation is so unique that he's in it with us.
Mhm.
And I mean, I cannot overstate the amount of support that is required to do this and to have two little kids at home. I cannot imagine what it would be like to not have a partner who was supportive, family that was supportive. But two, we somehow are able to be together 23 hours a day and work together and do great. I think it's a huge advantage.
So it's about you're closer, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there have been many things that have brought us closer. Give InKind started because we lost a child.
Mhm.
And that going through the most traumatic event splits people up. Huge divorce rates after the loss of a child, or it brings people closer together. And the fact that we've been able to build this company and work day in and day out together has absolutely brought us closer together. We have perspective, right? We know the little things that don't matter. We know the things that do matter. We've got a great rhythm. And like I said, I think it's a huge advantage. We have a routine where on Wednesday nights, there's a design and tech call that I only semi need to be listening to and chiming in on, but it's not my meeting. And so like he takes it from the standing desk in our bedroom and I sit behind and fold laundry. And it's just the right amount for me to be engaged, but not like hovering. And it's those little things, right? That's not happening in very many other team meeting dynamics.
Talk about this. I made a mistake a lot in the past. I think a lot of founders like they'll make a mistake of spending too much money, right? For example, well, I don't really need this marketing platform, but man, it's like 80% off for a year. Let me pay for that front. And 6 months go by. Oh crap, I never used it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a lot of those reflections often. When you've been self-funding or bootstrapping for a long time. I mean, okay, let's use the analogy, right, of people who win the lottery and the ways that money goes.
Very fast.
Very fast.
Like what, 98% or like back in the same situation?
Yep. Yeah. And it's not, right, I think that the way that founders earn money is not, right, obviously not like going and buying a Ferrari, but there is an idea, and I just saw somebody comment on LinkedIn about a company that just raised a ton of money in Australia, 15-minute grocery delivery, and then they're doing layoffs, they're shutting down right away. No, they're doing layoffs. They're shutting warehouses. They're not shutting down. I was like, how on earth did they spend so much money so fast? And the comment was like, founders seem to think that you will grow in direct proportion to the amount of money that you spend. But the answer is, or what I have learned, my experience is that until you know what is going to make you grow, you cannot spray and pray on all of these tactics. So hindsight, yes, we've bought SaaS tools that we didn't fully utilize. We've invested in a campaign or a consultant or a channel that didn't have the ROI. I think that founders for the next 2 to 3 years, one of the good things, I guess, about the sort of reckoning is that I think there's going to be a lot more focus. If everybody's saying you have to get cash flow positive, right? You have to think about everything that you do. What is the impact on my business going to be? What is the return of investment on this investment that I'm making? Because every time you spend money, you are making an investment with that money into the potential growth of your company. And if you can't say how this action or this work or this employee, this hire, this campaign is going to drive your business forward, then you should probably really consider if that is how you're going to spend your money. And I think that when you've been bootstrapping and now you have a big fundraise, it's really easy to sort of think, I need all these things because I'm supposed to, right? Or in my case, it was, I want to take all of these pieces of what I, as a solo, leader, do. So all of the business that isn't engineering, and I want to multiply each of these functions by a person, because a person should take each one of these functions. And the reality is, we're all of those functions having a corresponding impact on the business. And so I think it's really common and it's really easy to overspend when you have money for the first time as a founder.
So this is my favorite lottery story. So this family in Kentucky, maybe it's not Kentucky, we'll say Kentucky, won the lottery. They won a lot of money, right? And they bought like Ferraris, like Porsches, like all they went all out, like they bought all kind of crazy stuff, right? However, they live on a dirt road, not paved the road. So all those rocks that's jacked up the cars. And the car is like pretty much useless after like a couple of months, right? Like, yeah, that's a perfect story right there.
You don't think it through.
No.
Right.
And then I know recently there's a startup in Austin. I can't think of the name of it, but they raised $50 million. They just went under. Out of $50 million, they only spent 1.5 on development. They spent the rest on people, like first over blockchain, then over crypto, then FT, then was something else. But you knew it, all the money was gone. So yeah, sometimes it's not a good idea to raise too much money, right?
No, it's not. And if we think about overfundings, right? Clubhouse is a good example. How much money has been gone into what is now nearly obsolete tech, right? Or just, there's another company in a space tangential to mine. And I was in diligence with a fund for our seed investment. And then I know of another female founder who has a company closer to this other company than mine. And we got passed on because, we hadn't quite identified our growth flywheel, and she got passed on because she was too early. And this app, pre-launch, still in stealth, raised $14 million from this fund for a pre-launch app. I don't know what you need $14 million for as a pre-launch app. And I'm sure there was a plan, right? But how much, if we just shifted where some of the money goes, right? And how much of that could have gone to this other company that was early, to some other underrepresented founders, right? Unless you're doing real deep tech, hardware, med tech, I don't think that any consumer platform app needs that kind of initial startup budgets where you're putting all your eggs in that, that white guy's basket.
Yeah, I had an interview with a guy from Nashville last week. He's telling me a guy in Nashville raised $8 million just as an idea. Like, that's $8 million for some app, right? And they give $8 million. And they're like, everyone's like trying to figure what's going on here, right?
Yeah, and I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. It's going to be really interesting because it's changing really fast. And I don't know whether funding is going to, come back up the end of this year, next year. We don't know what the global economic.
Yeah, I just think it's crazy. Like, of course I'm exaggerating. We see like this 2 days ago, all this money is available. Everyone has dry powder, we're giving money away. And then like the next day, oh my goodness, it's gloom and doom. There's no money left. Like, what? Like, how does that happen, right? This doesn't make any sense to me.
It felt overnight. And I know founders personally and sort of, in sitting anecdotally, who are, getting their signed term sheets unfunded. And that's brutal. It's excruciating. And to think that is right. Those are like the people getting their first job offers rescinded. Like, there's a lot when you think that when you have a term sheet from a fund and that goes away, right? Everything. I think one of the things that's so difficult about being a founder is like, there's not just balls in the air, but like they all have to align at the right time. It's like a whole planetary thing, right? It feels like everything has to be in exactly the right place, exactly the right time. And if one of those things comes out of the way that it's supposed to be, like it can all drop.
Yeah. So back in the Clubhouse, it's like the Clubhouse was a hot thing. Everyone's on it. Now I go on my phone, I see Clubhouse, man, I need to delete this, like, cause I haven't been there for so long. Like, I need to leave. I just keep it on for some reason. I don't know. Right.
I took it off. I took it
Yeah.
off maybe a year ago because I just found that it lost, it saturated so quickly. And it could have been, I guess,
It's so
a
much
good
potential.
place for this conversation. I think they were really stupid to not sell to Twitter. I think then, now I get notifications of Twitter spaces on my phone, and I'm not necessarily listening to those either. I think that there was a real place for that group community audio, and that place was when we were all home and lonely.
Yeah.
And like I've even listened to it sometimes when I'm driving, but like the thing about, if somebody doesn't like what I'm saying, right, they're gonna like turn this off, or they'll fast forward 30 seconds, or but the thing about Clubhouse is you were just sort of like stuck. Man, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Can we get, like, I'm here for a topic. That is one of the things, and I feel this way about panels. And I've hosted panels at Seattle Startup Week. I've sat on panels. Staying on topic, something even, okay, I'm working on that muscle always, but right, there's people who come and sit on panels and then just have conversations that have nothing to do with the goal of the panel. And so I think it's really important. Clubhouse didn't do a good job of moderating that in any way.
They did not.
And people came for a topic, and then what I've heard is that it just sort of devolved into a bunch of sales pitches.
I think they missed the algorithm when I first got on, like the startups, tech business. All these invites, like that stuff, right? And then later on, I was getting invites like, I don't know, meditation, yoga, like stuff I would never be interested in, right? And then you go to topic, click on it. There's like 100,000 people in there, trying to talk to each other. People dominate the conversation. It's obviously salesy. It's lost its way. It's has so much potential.
Well, they invested $100 million in it. Why did that company need $100 million?
And then they like never hired anybody. I think it was like 10, 15 people. Like hire some devs, improve the I don't know.
There was no reason. So one of the lead investors on that deal is somebody who I respect very much, named Andrew Chen. He's a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, and he wrote a book recently called The Cold Start Problem. Now, I believe that The Cold Start Problem is one of the best books to come out on network effects. I think that every founder should read it. I think it's an incredible story about, it's the counter to If You Build It, They Will Come, right? It really tells you about how to get people coming and coming back. And so he's somebody that I respect very much. I think he's incredibly smart. I think that Clubhouse had these numbers of network effects and viral loops and all of the things that make for a super attractive business. So it's like, I want to hate on that investment. I'm sure they had their reasons. I still want to hate on.
So earlier you talked about being the only person in the room. What's your advice to anyone when they're the only person in the room?
I guess you have to be willing to speak up, because if we don't, right, we just perpetuate this idea that, nobody wants to be responsible for taking on the shoulders, right, this responsibility of
the whole everything.
Of representing a group. But there's a reason that these things keep perpetuating, right? Why we still have, and I don't know the numbers here, right, but the number of public company CEOs that are women is, right, less than 5%. We don't put women or other underrepresented groups at the table, and we don't bring them along with us. So maybe that would be a good one, is not just speaking up, but like trying to make sure that there's spaces at the table for other people that could grow, so you're not the only one at the table.
So what are you doing personally? I know you're doing a lot. What are you doing personally to help mentor female founders and bring them on board, so to speak?
Well, it's exactly that. So I mentor through the Founders Institute. So I'm regularly, I think I've done 3 years in a row now, where I generally talk on product management or on fundraising.
Yeah, that's a great fundraising talk you gave a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. You were there for
Yeah.
that, and that was the Founders Institute
Yeah.
one, right? Yep. And so I've been present at certainly some other events like that. I've spoken for the Female Founders Alliance, like later cohorts at UW, and then try and make myself available to female founders with questions. And so I do take a lot of calls and review decks and give feedback. And I think it's just being willing to pay it forward, because I have had a lot of people in my journey so far who have opened up and created that space for me. And so I think it's important that we all try and figure out how we can pay forward and keep some ball rolling in all these ways that'll better society, all the way down to those fifth graders who think that they don't know enough about math to be good at science.
So Laura, here's a scenario. Tell me you think this is a good or bad thing, right? Suppose there's a male founder. Like I'll use myself as an example. I'm starting a company. I'm trying to fundraise. And I see all this diversity stuff, right? So I think in my mind, man, my chance will increase if I bring on a female founder. But in my mind, I'm kind of like a male chauvinist. I don't believe females can do it. But man, I got to suck it up and give this female I know 10% of the company. The one thing is I think it's bad because like you're not doing it for the right reasons. But then it's good because you're giving a female co-founder role. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, but I also just explained to you that it's a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Right. And so you think, right, in that example, and I think there are a lot of people who again think that we have some sort of advantage. And
like the money floodgates just open because a female's on your team, whatever.
Yeah. And what's going to happen, like, sure, there's attention being paid to the fact that there are funds that focus on underrepresented founders. But those funds are such a small percentage of the money that's out there, right? The big funds, the $1 billion under management, they don't have we're focused on underrepresented founders clause, right? It's the overlooked and the people who've raised these $10 million funds. They're not, they're a drop in the bucket compared to where the growth runs are happening.
You're right.
Yeah. And then I think the problem in doing something like that disingenuinely is that you're not actually creating that seat at the table, right?
Yeah.
You're putting someone on paper, but
you're not really giving no power, nothing like that. They can make no decisions.
No, and I can tell you that if a male founder were to bring on a female co-founder just to like have it on the slide deck, well, that investors, when you go and give that pitch, right? Again, if it's not genuine, it's going to be really obvious really quick. Yeah.
So change the subject a little bit. There's something called Pregnancy After Loss Support blog. Was that your blog or blog you was on, or?
I'm on the board.
On the board, okay.
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit, but I'm on the board and then help them bring to market the first app of its kind. So I joined the board. As we mentioned, I lost a child late in pregnancy, my first child. And I didn't know anything about pregnancy loss. I certainly didn't know about what it would be like not only to lose a pregnancy, but then to be pregnant again. And it's incredibly difficult. It's very, very, very stressful. There's a lot of PTSD that goes along with that whole experience. And so I got a lot of support from this group, the Pregnancy After Loss Support Group. And it's a national global nonprofit that is a community for parents who are going through the experience of pregnancy after loss. And so I joined their board to help them bring to market an app specifically for families, often mothers, because there's a lot of apps out there for pregnant people that tell you, you're 6 weeks along and your baby is the size of a poppy seed and you track this timeline and you have all these, you can take photos and things like that. But there was nothing sensitive to the fact that pregnancy after loss is a very different experience. And so we built an app and it just came out last year, and we've had over 5,000 downloads and it has great reviews. And the most important thing is the number of people who say how important it was during their journey to have that particular tool in their pocket.
Now, on the blog, you share some about your own story, right? talk about why you decided like be so public, what you went through, like share the personal stories. Like you thought it was like do some good. Was it more for you, or is it more like you want to share your story and like help other people out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I find it therapeutic, sharing my story in ways and talking about it. Pregnancy loss is still a pretty taboo subject, and so it's not something that's talked about. And so if we don't, as I said, I was very naive to the fact that
And you were like in early 20s this time, mid 20s.
I was 31 when
Okay, but still pretty young though.
pregnancy. Yep. And so even though it had happened to my grandmother, even though, I didn't know that. And man, the stories that came out of the woodwork after a loss, everybody in my high school chemistry teacher, my, old coworkers, like everybody that came out to talk about this experience that they had as well. But if we think it's taboo now, it was certainly taboo 20
Oh
years
yeah,
ago, and
definitely,
40
no
years
doubt,
ago. I mean, it wasn't talked about. It wasn't talked about at all. And so, I don't think that people should be scared during pregnancy. I'm not saying that we should tell every family that is pregnant, just so you know, there's no sure thing, right? You could get all the way to your 8th month and this baby could still die for no reason. Like that's just not something that we as a culture want to, and I don't think that we should, but I wasn't aware. And so I think that talking about those stories is not meant to, as I said, scare people. But it's a very lonely, it's not unlike the founder journey, right? It's a very lonely place. And so if you don't know that this has happened to other people and other people that you know, when it happens to you, it's incredibly lonely. And then all the support comes along, right? But then going through the pregnancy after loss journey is lonely. And so it's important, I think, that we find community in each one of these challenges. And that is one of the reasons that I have shared openly about our loss and engaged in things like pregnancy after loss support.
So hope I asked this question the right way. But did anyone come out and say, was like negative, like, why are you doing this? This is bad, or anything like that? Was that pretty positive stuff you got back?
Our community was incredibly supportive. I have been cautious about the ways and where I have shared some of the details of our story. We shared, for example, photos of our daughter privately afterwards, not like right onto social media channels. And it's a sensitive subject, and
so I'm just curious. So you have 2 kids now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the oldest kid now, is that considered your oldest kid, or the one you lost to consider the oldest one?
The one that we lost was our oldest one. And that was our only daughter, and her name was Layla.
Okay.
And now we have a boy who is 7 and a boy who is 4.
Okay, nice. So you've raised a seed round. Have you raised an A round too, right?
No, what's funny is that we've raised pre-seed plus.
Oh my God, it's so many like acronyms.
We have just been stacking convertible notes, which
it's a risk to it, right?
not recommended. But it's just, you have to hit these milestones, and we have had incredible support from our investors here. So we raised a pre-seed, and then in October of 2019, and then we had such great growth at the beginning of the pandemic that we opened another note and raised another $1 million there. And then we have another one open right now, and a lot of repeat investors coming back because our impact is growing. Finding a lot of investors now who have healthcare backgrounds, that are seeing the relationships that we're building with hospitals. But yeah, we actually never formally raised a seed round.
Okay.
So we're somewhere in between those seed and Series
that
A
quasi
milestones.
place.
Yeah.
So talk about this. So I know a lot of founders, like, they'll raise some money and they'll stop pitching, right? But you're still pitch. Like, I think you did a pitch last month, something called a Flywheel conference. Talk about the points, like, even though you got money and you're doing all these great things, of still getting out there pitching and, all those kind of things.
So I think there's a difference between a pitch event like Flywheel, which was an amazing event. I highly recommend that founders apply to it, from the North Central Washington Tech Alliance, and they are just an incredible group with a really thriving tech community in North Central Washington, which I have not spent enough time in the Wenatchee, Leavenworth area. Beautiful. Best Mexican food I've had in Washington State ever. So good.
Of course, I'm not saying a lot.
So good. No, it's not for Western Washington. It turns out I'm just going to go to Wenatchee from now on when I need Mexican food. But if you're going to fundraise right, it's a process, and it is an all-consuming process. You prep for it, right? You train for it. You should be getting feedback. Your deck has to be ready. Your list has to be long. And so that I try and do in more discrete chunks. You sort of can't casually raise.
You're all in, right?
Yeah. And so while we do have an open fundraise right now, there was sort of a push to fund the first half of it. And now it's, we're not putting in, we're headed for cash flow positive. And so I'm not putting my head back down into a fundraise. And so I think that things like Flywheel are, it's great to get on stage and revise your pitch and have an opportunity to be back in front of people and practice. But I think that if you are actively fundraising, you need to be actively fundraising, because otherwise it will just slowly suck the life out of you, as opposed to doing it all at once. It's like an athletic event, right? I have to remind myself to hydrate. I have to, there's a different schedule for my kids. Like, I am ordering more takeout. That has to be a really condensed, hard period of time. And then you have to step away from it a little bit.
So you're saying is like, if your fundraise, don't put your toe in the pool, go up to the highest high diving board and just jump on in.
Yeah, but train first.
Okay.
Yeah. Be a good swimmer.
Do you think founders spend too much time pitching? Like, I'm not talking about pitching for fundraising, like doing pitch events, versus building the product.
Ooh, I think that pitch events have their place. I've loved them. I've done a lot of them. I think that founders need to not conflate sort of audience choice with investability, because it's really easy to go and do all these pitch events and get great feedback from the audience and win. But an audience is a lot more likely, I think, to over-index on impact, which is fantastic, right? We want to see companies do well, that will do good in the world. Investors are much more, looking behind the scenes at the stuff that you're not going to get in a 3-minute pitch. So also, you're only going to get the best of the best information in the 3-minute pitch competition, or the 5 minutes, or whatever it is. Investors are taking hours and hours of diligence and much more information to make investment decisions. And so I think it's a really great way to practice your pitch. It's a great way to meet customers. It's a great way to meet potential employees. I think that there's absolutely a value early on in going to those pitch competitions, getting some validation, right? Because if you're smoke and mirrors, like, someone in the audience will call you out. They do ask good questions. If you get up there and pitch and everybody's like, we don't understand what you did, well, that's important information. So I think it's a good way to, like, not market validate, but even just get practice at standing up there and have to make a pitch, right? And understand what makes a good pitch, because what you don't want to do is have never pitched before and then get on with an investor and you haven't gotten any feedback. And
people don't realize you can practice all yourself by yourself, but it's a totally different game when you're in front of people or the camera's on you. It's like totally different.
Yeah,
it's not even close. So when someone's fundraising, how long should they fundraise for? Like, so they fundraise for, supposed to fundraise for 2 months, they get nothing. So you go back to the drawing board. I've heard, like, you fundraise too long, get a bad reputation, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons that you want to do all of your prep, because it's true. You have to. I hate this so much about this, right? But it's true that, like, FOMO plays into it, momentum plays into it. And so there is Leslie from the Female Founders Alliance has been an advisor to us. And when I'm fundraising, right, it's like a coach. How many emails did you send this week? Oh, you need to send 30, you need to send 50, you need to send 100, you need to keep a log, you need to, like, go. Because you can't casually do it, because you can't stretch it out. And the other thing you have to do is you have to keep all of your irons in the fire as much as you can. So it's not like, oh, well, hey, I've got 3 interested investors. And so now I'm going to back off the rest of the fundraise because you don't know how those 3 are going to turn out. And then what happens is if you get really excited about those 3 and then none of them invest, well, now your pipeline has dried up. And so keeping that pipeline super full, having everybody, it's a waste of time to send emails and find connections to investors who don't invest at your stage, who don't invest at your space, right?
You gotta do some research, right?
You have to do your research. You have to have a finely researched list in terms of here's who I'm reaching out to, why, and go find that info. Like, yeah, you might not have the connections, but like find them on Twitter, follow them on Twitter, engage with them, like all of those things, build those relationships.
Yeah, VCs are so big on Twitter. I have to get more active on Twitter. I do. They're so active on Twitter.
So I was not a Twitter user until post Give InKind. Like I had a Twitter, for years that I would use to like tweet at the airline about bad service or whatever. Then you realize they actually don't care if you have 10 followers and you're tweeting, they see into you. But then I started using it for, and I think all of everything I have on Twitter is sort of VC and funding thought leadership, which maybe is why everything feels so doom and gloom right now.
So talk about follow-up. Like you reach out to investors. How often should someone follow up? Like 5 times, 6 times, like 7 times, or you should keep on going until someone says, "Stop emailing me"?
Oh, I don't know. I don't do that. I think I was only bumping an email maybe 3 times max. Now I did see a write-up recently, but I think it was in regards to sales emails. And there's thought leaders. So this was an email, I think, that came from Hustle Fund, which is an early stage, a pre-seed fund, solely on pre-seed. And they had an email come out recently about sales emails that I forwarded on to our marketing manager because I thought it was great. And it really, and this is one of the reasons that I'm not in sales, because it was showing the average response rate based on the email number. And it was like the 4th or 7th email got one of the highest response rates. Now, I don't know how many of those were stop emailing me, but that just blows my mind because I am the type of person where I'm just sort of like, okay, you're not interested. Like, okay, I can't, the sales emails that you get, like I got one this morning. I hate them so much. That's like, well, I'm feeling like we're in a one-sided relationship here. And I'm like, you spammed me. Yes, it is a fully one-sided relationship. I'm not interested in engaging with you. I suggest that people use some sort of like, I use superhuman email because it automatically has the read receipts on it. So like when you are doing investor outreach, absolutely have you'd be using an email tracker so that if your email is getting opened, how many times it's getting opened. You should be sending your deck with something like DocSend so that you know who is reading it. Because if somebody hasn't opened my email, I'm probably more likely actually to bump it up and try and get it open. But if I emailed somebody 3 times, they read it every time and they looked at the deck and they didn't respond, like I'm going to leave them alone. It's not a good fit.
What's the lesson you learned from fundraising that you wish you could redo? Besides clone yourself?
So much. I think you need to get everything I just said about running the process, right? But then it's really hard when you've been working really, really hard on something for a long time and you get feedback, it can be hard to iterate, right? And because you have just worked something to what you think is perfection and you've gotten feedback from all these different people and you fine-tuned and then you take it out and you get feedback and it can be hard to know which feedback to take and not take too deeply, right? So it's that balance of taking in all of that feedback, but it can be really hard to be willing to listen to that and take it and make the little tweaks that you need to make. And so I think that one of the things that I maybe would have done differently is really taking each piece of feedback and using it to try and improve versus just reaching out to more people. Like, okay, well, what is it that isn't, where is the problem, right? Oh, is it in our market size? Is it in our go-to-market strategy? Like, what is it that's missing the mark with some of these investors and using that to sort of springboard into improvements?
Yeah. So you want to talk about the sum? Can you talk more about your entrepreneur journey?
with Give InKind or
Just in general.
just in general?
Yeah.
Well, so I was so inspired. I mentioned a little bit at the beginning of this, my dad, who was a huge inspiration to me. And when he, I mentioned that he was a tugboat captain for much of my young life, running boats from here in Seattle for Crowley. If you ever see a red stack tug, those are Crowley boats. And he went up to the North Slope of Alaska and he was gone for 4 months at a time when my brother and I were little. And as I had said, and I still have his old Casio handheld computer, and he would program and come home like, oh, I made a new game for you guys. And then at some point he decided that he needed to get off the tugboats and spend more time with his family. And he and my parents were always into real estate. And he said, I have an idea. I am going to start a company where people can look on, and it wasn't the internet at that point because they were dialing in, right? So I don't even remember what we called it. I was too young. He wanted to create a place where people could go from their computers to look at houses online. And my mom was a real estate appraiser, so she knew the ins and outs of the MLS. And he built realestateonline.com in 1994. He had a write-up in the Seattle Times, and real estate agents across the state told him, this is insane. People do not want to look for a house on their computer. They want to come and they want to sit in a realtor's office and they want to flip through a book of all of the listings. And you're crazy. I asked my mom recently, we were living way out in the on the Key Peninsula outside of Tacoma, but he had an office in Federal Way. And so I asked her just recently, I said, why was the office in Federal Way? Why did you drive all that way? And she said, well, because that's the point where you could have modems, because people were dialing into the service. You could have modems with both 253 and 206 area codes in Federal Way. That's the meeting place. So, he ended up shutting that down because he got, some customers, and I don't know what year Zillow started, but, it could have been that many years after all of this in 94. But he was always entrepreneurial. And I guess that I was too, right? I was always babysitting for extra money. And I was the kid who went out on my 16th birthday to get a job. Like, yes, I can make money of my own now. But then it didn't, as I said, I had a career and it took a while before I was willing to make that jump into doing it myself. But I'm still always thinking about that stuff. My son, I have a big garden, and my son said, can I have a lemonade stand? I want to I want to buy myself a Nintendo Switch. Because he asked for a Switch for Christmas and Santa brought him an old Wii because that's how I roll. And I said, well, why don't you sell the produce? You can help me in the garden and then we'll create a produce stand. And now he has a produce stand on Monday nights in our neighborhood. And so right now all of our energy and is going into Give InKind, but we're always thinking of what else it would be, right? What's another business? I don't know why we don't have drive-up convenience stores. That might be the next thing for me. Like, why can't I pull through a coffee stand and get a gallon of milk?
Yeah, right. Why not? Yeah, that's a good point.
The thing with the one item, and I thought of this because I had my son in the car, the little one who couldn't really stay for me to go into a grocery store. And I literally needed a gallon of milk and I had to go to 7-Eleven. And the thing where there's the one item that you would be willing to go all the way to the back of the grocery store for because you need it, right? And it's eggs, bread, milk, sandwich meat, whatever. Yeah. There's only a handful of items that somebody is willing to run into the store to buy that one thing. Those things should be in the drive-up coffee stands. But what's going to happen is there's going to be a bunch of vacant drive-up coffee stands soon because you see that they're changing the laws.
I didn't see that.
They're going to require, well, at least there's a bill for it, which is horrible. They are requiring the drive-up coffee stands to be fully plumbed and have toilets in them. Those coffee stands they're a shed.
They're smaller than this office.
It's a wood shed. There's no way. And it's going to put that's thousands. We love our drive-up coffee stands here in Washington. It is going to put thousands of them under business.
So let me get this right. Through. They want a toilet so people use the bathroom, take dumps where they make my coffee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's really stupid. And so I hope that it doesn't pass because it's, there's a lot. Those are the smallest of the small businesses. Those are people who saved up to put their $20,000 shed in the parking lot. and they're going to shut them down.
Unbelievable. But I'm not surprised, unfortunately.
But maybe they should stop selling coffee and start selling milk and bread.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do for fun?
Well, I garden. That's a lot of my fun. We camp. So we bought one of those pop-up trailers 3 years ago, early in the pandemic. And the thing that I love about, if you've ever seen, so the pop-up tent trailer is like, it travels flat and then it goes up and then has these two canvas sides that come out the side. And when I tell people that we bought a pop-up camper, like anybody who had one as a child, it's such a like, oh, I had one of those. Those are the best. Oh, my best memories of my childhood are in our tent camper. And for some reason, all the tent campers were made in the 80s. Like I think maybe ours was like a 92 or something. And we bought it from a family that had 4 boys and camped in it for 15 years and took a great care of it. So we camp all summer long because it's our little home away and we go. So we're going this weekend. It's going to be super hot.
So like weekend excursion, so to speak.
Yeah. So we do Friday to Sunday, and then I'm out in the garden on Sunday nights.
So what's the farthest out y'all been camping? Like Eastern Washington, another state, or you close by?
Yeah, no, we take it down to Oregon. So we have friends. We've gone down outside of Eugene a couple times. We have a spot that we like. We just went back to a few weeks ago in the pouring down rain, Willapa Bay out on the Long Beach Peninsula, which I only recently learned that, and I don't know if it's not Long Beach. I'm blanking on which little town it is right there, is the oyster capital of the world.
Okay. So it's Long Beach, Ocean Shores.
Yeah. So sort of south of there, south of Westport. And Willapa Bay is really interesting because it's so shallow. And so when the tide goes out, the bay is like empty. And so you can walk out a mile into the middle of the bay. You just have to watch because the tide's going to come back really quickly. But it's full of shellfish. And so that's super fun. We like shellfish gathering. To me, it's that like bootstrap or entrepreneur thing. Like, wait, I can just walk out into the dirt and I can collect dinner. Like that is some major ROI. So we really, really like doing that.
So what's your favorite fruit or vegetable as far as gardening?
Ooh, so this year I grow a lot of onions. I've learned that that's something that it just does very well. A lot of greens, a lot of lettuce, a lot of kale. That has all been very happy right now with the cooler start to summer that we've had. So I think everybody's greens are flourishing. And I love growing tomatoes. Because that's, have you ever gone to a farmer's market like peak summertime and they want $7 a pound for these heirloom tomatoes? And I understand why, because anybody who has only ever eaten a grocery store tomato and has never had a fresh garden tomato,
big difference.
Yeah. It's like strawberries. Everybody right now should go and get strawberries from the farmer's market or from a U-Pick or something, because it's not the same. We don't realize that the food that we get from the grocery stores is not the same anymore, right? It's not only all modified and GMO, but it was all picked 3 weeks ago so that it will still be fresh. Like if you go to a U-Pick place and get strawberries, which I, again, highly recommend that people do right now is the time. And you take those strawberries home, you need to do something with them like in 48 hours or they are mush and mold. And think about how different that is from the carton of strawberries that you buy at the grocery store, which can sit for a week.
Yeah.
Why?
I know I used to go deep sea fishing every year out of Westport, and like this, like that salmon, you see the real color salmon versus the store salmon. It's like that's not even close. And how long you been gardening?
So it's been growing over the years. It's really neat. It's actually, my mom has property that was my grandparents. My grandparents bought this property north of Gig Harbor 40 years ago. And my grandfather gardened there. It was his garden. And so I have these memories as a little kid of like picking peas in his garden. And then they've both since passed away. And then we were out of the area for a long time. And as we came back, the garden has slowly been growing. And I don't know if it's this, like, I'm about to turn 40. If it's just this age where all of a sudden I didn't think gardening was going to be a passion or a hobby of mine. But I have jumped full force into it. And so only just a few years, and then doing more and more like planning. So last year was the first year that I sort of used a web tool to plot out and figure out, calculate how many seeds. And this year I redid all the irrigation. So I learned all about drip
Oh,
irrigation.
wow, you're going all in.
And I am going all in, but it's that, everything that we started was from seed. And so to see this, to step back in July and look at this plot of land that is full, and to know that everything started as a little packet of seeds in my living room, it's so cool. And I think as a founder, you miss, right? You grind it out all the time. And I'm always grinding. And it takes really stepping back and looking at that. Like we do a year in review. And I just did some summary numbers for the flywheel pitch. And I was like, wow, we've had 3 million people come to Give InKind. They have sent $4 million in support to other people through our platform. They've done 150,000 acts of service. So that's, I'm taking you dinner, I'm walking your dog, right? For their friends and their family and their community. But when you're just in it every day and you're thinking about like, can I get one more user and one more number and one more transaction and all of that, it's hard to step back and really look at the impact and the fruits of your labor. And I think there's something about gardening. It's just like that journey, right? Where it's like, I started with a seed, I started with a thing, but with a garden, I've got tomatoes in 2 months, right? Nothing happens for me in a startup in 2 months.
So going back to Thailand, have you ever found a Thai restaurant in the area that's just as good, or at least kind of close to the Thai food back there?
Ooh, so I, in Tacoma, yes. And I'm certain that they are in Seattle as well. I just haven't spent any time eating in Seattle in the last 2 years. They certainly are in Tacoma. It's interesting. I think that even the Thai food that is super close to what I experienced in Thailand here, they're still working with ingredients that are here, right? So it's the same thing like the farmer's market. Like it's just, the pigs eat different food in Thailand. And so, and the cooking, the apparatus are different. It's different. It tastes different because you were sitting on a turned over bucket on a street corner eating the noodles. And so it tastes different.
Exactly.
But we traveled all over Southeast Asia during that time. And so the ability to like eat a banh mi in Vietnam was amazing. I love Vietnamese food. I love all Asian food. And there's just, there's nothing like it.
And people don't realize, having been to Thailand, that spice level is just a different level, right? I went to eat one time, I said, man, I'm not spicy, but let me get a 1. That 1 was like an American 10.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness. I can't deal with this.
Yep.
Craziness.
Good.
So how do you take care of yourself? How do you take care of your wellness? Make sure you don't get burnt out and, just here for the long run, so to speak.
Man, it's something that something I'm always trying to improve on. I go through phases. I go back to the gardening, right? For me, like time spent weeding and raking and doing that physical outdoor labor is really good for me. That is probably the key to keeping me balanced. We have a Peloton. I ironically broke my foot on it. We're probably going on 8 weeks now, just kicking it. We had moved it, so that muscle memory of where you expect something not to be, and managed to fracture it, which meant that I was off it for a period of time. And now I need to just get back onto it now that I can put my feet in those shoes again. I love that my family, one of the things about kids getting older that's really nice is that they can be involved in the activities. So we can take a bike ride, we can take a walk, we can take a hike. And those, it's fun to have your kids get older and be able to partake in all of those activities with you.
So how do you prioritize what you're doing, like day to day, week to week? Like you do wing it, you have a calendar. How do you make sure you prioritize and do focus things 1 and 2 versus going to number 97?
I keep a dashboard. We use Notion and across the company and absolutely love it. And so we all have a custom Notion dashboard. So that's where I can sort of see tickets that are incoming for me, but I have to make sure that I'm, having people make tickets I'm learning a lot more about, what is probably some neurodiversity and coping mechanisms that I have used and skills that I should learn even more for keeping good order around prioritization, which I guess is a long way of saying I'm not always great at it. Sometimes I'm like an inbox dictated prioritizer, right? Which is not like just making sure that the things that are at the top of my inbox are addressed is not a good way, right? Checking to remember what tabs you have open as your to-do list is not a good way to do it. So I am learning more of those skills, right? And it's, for me, it was about actually moving out of paper. I was a paper notebook keeper and to-do lister for a very long time. And then I learned that what happens is that the pages just get turned and then that information is sort of gone. So trying to make sure that I have a good way that I can also in my priority list, a Notion, I can sort of drag and drop and reorder things. And then just getting them done. Just, and even if it was a lower priority, but I got it done. Well, sometimes we need a little bit of that, a positive affirmation of just checking stuff off of our list.
Yeah, I know. Recently, like every startup founder has said how great Notion is. Like everyone loves Notion. I need to check it out and learn it.
It's pretty amazing. And I think that it can be overwhelming. We have my co-founder is a total Notion guru. And so that has really helped. I think that it's one of those tools that can be sort of overwhelming or feel not as powerful as it is if you don't know what you're doing with it. And so it really helps to get somebody in to say, like, what are your needs? I feel that way about, I don't know if you've ever been in Tableau, like super powerful data tool, but not anyone can just open up Tableau and like make use of it. And I sort of feel that way about Notion. Like it has very powerful capabilities, but if you don't know what you're doing with it, then it can just feel like another wiki and documentation tool.
So with the Give InKind platform itself, how does it work? Like, do people would I go in there and say, hey, this bad thing happened to me, I need donations, or how does that go?
Similar. So it's primarily, so yes, that's the way GoFundMe works, for example, right? Give InKind is more used for people's friends, family, community, generally people who know them. And it's for the situations where often it's something bad. It's all challenging moments, but that's all. It's new babies, cancer support, surgery, lost my home in a house fire. And it's a way to respond to those questions of people saying like, well, let me know how I can help. We know it's not helpful when you're going through a really challenging time. A bunch of people saying, let me know if you need anything, because then what happens is that when you're like, well, I actually do need these 5 things, but am I actually supposed to go back to all those people who said, let me know how to help, and tell them like, well, I need my prescription picked up from the pharmacy. I need to pick up my kid from school. Like, which do you want to do? And what do you want to do? So people create a page on Give InKind, and actually normally it's not the person going through the thing, it's somebody that's close to them, right? And they set up a page on Give InKind, and it has a care calendar on it. And so people might start something that a lot of people think of as called a meal train. So, hey, Sarah's husband just passed away. We're going to make sure that the family's fed for the next month. So we create a bunch of slots where people can sign up to bring or send dinner. They use it for rides to the doctor, childcare, walking the dog, grocery deliveries, all sorts of things that people need when they're, just need some support in their life because of this big challenge. People can create a wish list or add to a wish list. So we see a lot of digital gift cards coming through there. They can share updates with their community. So it's a journaling mechanism. So we have people who are journaling every day or every couple days on their on their cancer journey recovery, on their sick kid who was born early and is in the NICU, or they're just sharing new baby photos.
Do y'all do anything to like vet people to make sure what they're saying is actually true, or is that between the people that do it?
Yeah, so we've had very little incident of fraud.
Okay.
And only once have we had someone. What we have is more just people trying to buy gift cards with stolen credit cards, and we have a whole bunch of mechanisms in place to prevent that. Gift cards don't come through for 24 hours. There's, a bunch of security checks on the credit cards. We know that if all of a sudden you have a brand new Give InKind page and then 5 Sephora gift cards were sent to it, it's probably not valid. So we don't have, because the support is most often coming from someone's own community, then we're not as concerned about fraud because we're not like promoting them on the front page or the homepage. Hey, everybody go and help this story.
Mm.
So only once did we have somebody come to us and say, hey, somebody created a Give InKind page that is pretending to be our family that is going through this crisis. So it's not too big of an issue, not in the same way that it is with GoFundMe.
And how long can someone have a page? Is it like a certain amount of time, or a certain amount of money, or can it be
Nope.
forever?
Forever. We have pages. So, we have a lot of data around the average amount of time that a page lives. And so that's about 30 days. It really depends on the situation. Pages for cancer support go on 2 months or 3 months or 4 months or a year. And we have people who've been using Give InKind pages to coordinate support for older people in their life, grandparents or whoever. And we have pages that have been going on for 2 years.
Has there been a time where like someone wanted to do a page and you were like, not took it off, but like this is kind of borderline, like, you have cancer stuff, no loss of kids, and someone might have said, hey, I'm gonna do a page because I sprained my ankle, like, is there like a limit? Like, what's the limit, so to speak?
No, so we have really broad situations available. You have to choose, you set up why you're setting your page. You say, you select from some categories when you set it up. And some of them are ongoing support. But I think, one of our beliefs is that there's no situation that is more or less deserving of support.
Mm.
And I think that's because we don't know people's circumstances, right? If you broke your phone and you wanted to create a page, we have seen, to help you replace your phone, like, a lot of people might judge you, but if you needed that phone to get a job or communicate with your job and keep your job, right? Who are we to say that you shouldn't try and get some support to raise your, to replace your phone? Now, I think one of the other things that we really do in this society is that we really stack rank deservedness, right? Like, well, I think this is something that, probably women do more so also, which is, well, I'm, sure, I'm laid up, I'm sick, and I, have cancer, and my mom just died, but at least all these other things didn't happen to me, right? I don't need help as much as the person who, is more sick or is, I don't need help for spraining my ankle because my neighbor has cancer. Like, again, that shouldn't disqualify us from getting help and support just because other people have it worse.
That's a great point.
Yeah, we really believe that everybody should have access to getting support from their community, and that Give InKind can make it easier.
So here's a question for you. We all have a list we do. Like, suppose you have a list, I'm making this up, you have a list like 100 things to do, right? And every day you do things 1 to 10. But it's been 4 months passed on and things 20 to 99 are still on your list. Do you say, hey, if I haven't done this 3 months, is not a point in me taking my list, or you try to delegate to someone? How do you handle that?
Oh, that's a good question. And we tackle that a lot when we're looking at our product backlog, right? And it's a discussion that my co-founder and I have all the time, because he has a belief that things should just get stale and be marked as such, and they should disappear from the backlog. If it wasn't important enough for us to make it a priority, is it really important? And yeah, I guess I probably am a believer that it was there for a reason. And so long as the reason is still valid, which is, I guess, one of the reasons that I think it's not a bad idea to some days just go take care of items 97 to 99.
So how do y'all do your product roadmap for your company?
Well, so we have a pipeline of suggested improvements from the team, and this is one of these great Notion integrations that we have. So anybody can enter into a Slack channel. We have Slack channels for product improvements and bug reports, and you can just enter in high level description, and that's going to automatically create a ticket in Notion. And so then you can go to Notion and enter more information. And so then we have all of these tables in Notion. So we have incoming requests and improvements, and it's my job to go through and sort of parse those out and prioritize them. And then we take the top chunk of priorities, and those actually go into the product roadmap. And then from there, then we're working with engineering to get level of effort, and I'm mapping them against our OKRs so that we can really start to look at, okay, this is the OKR that we're focused on, and here are the pieces that we think are going to make the biggest impact. They have the highest priority score, and they have a level of effort that we can, that we think we should take off at this time. And so it's this balance, I think, of weighing effort and impact, which, is how I think we should all be prioritizing. And not to say that we should all be prioritizing the things that are the lowest impact, because we don't necessarily prioritize the things that are the lowest impact. I'm sorry, the lowest effort. But it is important to know how much effort something is going to be, right? And I don't think we can make good decisions about how to prioritize features, for example, unless we know how much effort it's going to be.
So this one thing I don't think we talk about enough as entrepreneurs, like, being a startup founder is hard, it's not easy, all that kind of stuff. But like life still goes on, right? Like you have 2 kids, you gotta be a mother, a wife, you gotta wash clothes, maybe the car might break down, all this stuff happens, right? How do you deal with all that, like life stuff, so to speak?
It's so hard. And I loved listening to Michelle talk about this because I think she has some of the same attitude that I do. You have to just choose the things that you can let go. Because when you are building a company and there is no 9 to 5, right? There's no shut off. You have to create the mental space for that. And so there have been things that you have to just know that you're not gonna, your house probably isn't going to be perfect. You're certainly not there with your kids all day, right? That you have to have a supportive partner, supportive family, or supportive friends who can take care of helping lift you up. I think it's a little bit of, I know that term horse trading, like you're just going to have to make trade-offs, and you have to accept going into this that there are trade-offs. But I think one of the great advantages one of the reasons that I think entrepreneurs start down this path is for some level of flexibility. And while that's like a joke, haha, we're all fully entrenched in our company, it takes a lot of mind space for sure. But most of the time, the flexibility is there. If I want to go to my kid's school or a performance at 1:00, I can be there, most of the time. I can start dinner at 4:00 most nights because I'm going to be back online at 9 when the kids go to bed. And so I think it's just about, sort of forcing yourself into compartmentalizing at times and saying like, okay, this can wait. This will be here when I get back. And I'm going to, make the time right now, this time for mothering or wifing or cleaning or whatever it might be.
And how do you do your schedule? Like, do you work 12-hour days, 7 days a week? Do you have a day of the week, or do you do no work at all? Or do you like take little mini breaks through the day?
No, we tune out. I'm pretty good about disconnecting on the weekends right now, especially in the summer. I'm very good at disconnecting because I'm out camping almost every weekend. The problem is that I can't, we have live chat customer support 5 days a week, not 7. And I can't get myself not to look at, like, I still get notifications on my phone. I don't answer them all, only if it seems urgent. But like, I couldn't go out of cell service for 7 days right now in our company's place that we are. I couldn't do it because if there's still like these nuances to, is the number of people on the site right? Right? All these sort of like trends that are in my head. So I disconnect pretty well on the weekends. But no, otherwise our schedule is, I do the morning routine with the kids and then they're off at school or camp all day. And then generally doing family time in the evenings, but then we have a lot of meetings. I mean, because the team is 14 hours away, sometimes the work happens very early in the morning because there's been a release overnight, or we're sending out some marketing messaging early in the morning. And then we're almost always back online at night. And that's just because the dev team is firing back up and we have regular meetings with them. And so it's split. And I think in some ways that's, probably more productive. Maybe everyone would be more productive if in ways they split their time, right? Do as the Spaniards do and take a big break in the middle of the day.
Exactly. So Laura, you already talked some about your company, but can you go in more detail, like how it got started again, what you focus on now, and what's your big picture vision for it moving forward?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Give InKind started because we lost a child. And more than that, we had a community of people who wanted so badly to support us, friends and family and coworkers and everybody, and they were spread all around the country. And I was working at the time for Dex Media, which is one of the Yellow Pages companies. And I was building for them helping run a reputation management tool that helps small businesses listen to their customers. And so when I went out on leave with our loss, and we had all these loved ones who wanted to help us, but they didn't know. I mean, this was literally down to the problem of them not knowing what restaurants or grocery stores or delivery services were in our area, because they were trying to help from the East Coast or from up here. And given that my business was connecting consumers and businesses in their local areas, I thought, man, there had to be a better way for all of these people who love us to know what they should do when somebody is, how they could help, what sorts of things they can do in this, sort of terrible moment, but then get connected to the businesses around that person to give that support. And so they were using a platform to take care of dinners for us called Meal Train. And I had never experienced it. I didn't know anything about it. And sort of went, this is kind of some old and clunky tech. I think that there's a much more modern way to do this. And because this was 2013 and we were in Venice Beach, we had Instacart, we had Uber Eats, but like those services weren't elsewhere in the country yet. And so nobody knew about them. And so I thought, man, there has to be a more modern way where we can connect all of these services and really help people know how to help and like soften the way that we communicate the things that we need. And so then I chatted with a group of moms who all had kids who had gone through pediatric cancer treatment. And it was a similar conversation of like, when you had people who wanted to help, but didn't know how, like, what did you do? And the answer was, well, we used one platform over here, and that was Meal Train. And then we were posting updates on Caring Bridge, and we were raising money on GoFundMe. And like, at the end of the day, I just had this sick kid in this room who wanted, these special markers in the middle of the night. And I had all these people who said, let me know how to help. But there wasn't like actually a good mechanism for connecting all of these people who wanted to help and letting them know how to do it. So that's when we decided to build Give InKind.
And what's the focus on right now? Just customer growth or bring more people to the platform?
Yeah, it's customer growth. So it's always customer growth. And it's been interesting to watch sort of post-COVID, the ways that people help. So when we started the platform, some people want to help in person, some people want to send help from afar. And we were seeing that the ways that people were sending help was digital gift cards was a lot of that. And then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden nobody could help in person, and everybody wanted to send gift cards for DoorDash and Uber Eats and Instacart. And so we really ramped up that part of the business, which is the primary way that we drive our revenue today. And now it's interesting watching as everybody's sort of coming out again, right? Watching how that behavior has changed and the ways that people are now taking dinner to their neighbor again. And so we're going to be watching pretty closely what the trends are in the ways that people are giving support, but then also always customer growth. So a lot of partnerships and hospital partnerships. And we just brought on a new marketing manager who has a big, her background is at the juncture of healthcare and faith communities. And those are two big users for us. And so we're really working on growing those sorts of partnerships with local faith organizations and national healthcare partners, because that'll be a big channel of growth for us.
And so the future, you're trying is your future vision, have a certain amount of money raised in the platform, percentage of people who need help,
We just want it to be the default response when somebody we know is going through something, to be able to say like, hey, I'll start a Give InKind page for you. The way that I think in some communities GoFundMe became sort of like a default, right? If you heard about, whenever you hear about some big tragic accident in the news, right, there's always a GoFundMe attached. Well, there should be a Give InKind attached, and there are to some of them, but like we want it to be that natural response that when that whether again your neighbor had a baby or fell and broke their hip or lost a loved one, or that it should be this like, I'll start your Give InKind page. Because one of the hardest things for me to hear, and I hear all the time, is I wish I knew about this when I needed it the most. So we want to make sure that people don't ever say, man, I really needed that. I really could have used a Give InKind page. I didn't know it existed.
And are you only in the United States or across the world?
No, we are only in the US.
Is a plan like
today.
expand later on, or I'm guessing?
We will. Yeah, there's all sorts of tax implications for selling goods and transferring money, which is sort of something that has been more complicated than we expected or hoped for.
So you know this, do you track this? Do you track like, like how I put this, like what kind of economic demographic donates? Is like people make 100,000 donate, people like 20,000 less donate? Any information on that?
Interesting. So we do have in Tableau, thanks to an amazing program, we worked with a team of UW Tacoma students who were all getting their master's in applied analytics. And they did a year-long program with us and just culminated. It was very cool. And it was all really digging into our data from a bunch of different ways, helping us figure out like what makes people get the most support. Is it the way they fill out their page? Is it where they live? What kinds of support they get? And so they did some geographic overlays of the different types of support that happen on Give InKind, and then against things like income of the zip code. And so we can see trends of zip codes with higher incomes do a lot more transactions, especially because a lot of people's support is coming from actually within their local community. And then not surprisingly, where some of our, the most of our users are is in the it's in the Bible Belt. It's the swath from Texas to Georgia. And we have a lot of users in there because I think that's a very, the concept of a meal train, the concept of like, I'll bring a casserole, because somebody died is very cultural in the South and the Southeast. And, I think we're a little more like, you're on your own here in the Northwest.
Yeah, unfortunately. So Laura, anything else to ask you that I haven't asked you yet, or anything else you want to talk about?
No, we covered it all. We covered the travels and the startup and the fundraising environment, and good reminders for me to prioritize the things that bring me joy.
Nice. Can you share your social media links with us so people can reach out to you for you and your company?
Yeah, so we're Give InKind, GIVEINKIND.com. And then I am on Twitter at Laura Give InKind. But then Give InKind is on all the platforms just as our business name.
And to a listener who has the links to our social media in the show notes, you can find the show notes at www.cavnessexoblah.com. And be sure to share this episode with your friends and network and subscribe to the podcast. Laura, it's not like I have so much more to ask you. I'm drawing a blank right now for some reason. So that's going to ask you what you do for fun. How do you keep up with your skills? Like, how do you professionally develop yourself, so to speak, right? How do you make sure you're the best CEO possible? Like, do you have coaches, mentors you go to? I know you said, I think Leslie's like one of your mentors.
Yeah, so we have advisors for the company for sure. And I meet with them bi-weekly, trying to always bring a question. Right. And this is a habit I've had ever since I was an individual contributor having one-on-ones with my bosses. And I had a mentor that I worked under 3 different times before starting Give InKind. I worked under 4 different times before starting Give InKind. And he was just an incredible mentor to me and challenged me and hard on me. And I think it was one of my first one-on-ones with him where I was actually directly reporting to him. And I came in and he, gave me a talking to about the fact that was my meeting. I needed to understand the structure of a one-on-one. I was coming and needing to present my challenges, what I was working on, the things I was going to improve on, like that. And so that's when I learned, right, or I try and be better about not just sort of giving updates in a meeting, but using that opportunity to present a challenge or to talk through something I'm working on. And I think as founders, especially when your advisors, you're talking to your investors are investors as they are in the majority of our case, is that you don't want to look stupid, right? You don't want to, it's like, they tell you to always include an ask in your investor updates. And it's hard to say, here's something that I need, because you kind of want to pretend like you have it all together. But the fact is they know that you don't have it all together. And so those are learning opportunities. I read quite a bit on Medium, follow the rabbit holes on Twitter. I mean, I actually think that as a founder, Twitter is a decent place, right?
It
because you
is.
get the thought leadership that then you can go and read more on the blogs of the different funds or the different founders who have walked in your shoes before.
Yes. Man, we're gonna have to do another talk because I got some real questions to ask you. This has been a fun talk. But I know oh yeah, networking. So I know you're going to a networking event tonight. Talk about the balance founders need to have between networking and working a product. I know so many people like network. Like what's it called? Entrepreneurs, what do you want to call it?
Yeah, I don't, yeah. You can't spend all your time networking for sure. And actually, I probably spend less than I should because as it turns out, I'm an introvert, which I didn't know. I did not know that introverts, that this is sort of classic. So I said, I can't be an introvert. Like I loved getting on stage and pitching. And then I found out
I'm the same way. Yeah.
that's an introvert thing.
Yeah.
But put me into a room, like I hate nothing more than walking into an event, and everybody's standing in those groups of 3 or 4 at the tall tables, and you just have to like, I'm supposed to walk up and interject myself.
I refuse to do it.
It's
I refuse to do it. I refuse to do it. And like when I'm in a group of 4 people talk, someone goes up and I was like, you're so rude. Like we're here talking, right?
It's really hard. It is hard. And I know people who are fantastic networkers, and I am not one of them.
Like I really don't care how your coffee is, how your day was going, like it's like you want to talk about something deep and personal, I'm down for it. But it's like, oh, the weather's this, like, oh, who cares?
But you never know, you never know who you're going to meet. And so I think it is important to be involved in those events. And there's one in Tacoma. I hope that you will come. What are they calling it now? Because it was Startup 253, small city startup.
Okay.
The guy's name is Ston, and he's an incredible supporter of South Sound tech scene. And they have, I will make sure that you were invited to the next one, because I kept having a conflict, and then Ston said, will you speak? He's probably watching because he's such a good supporter of us. Will you come speak at the event? I'm like, well, this is how you're going to get me to come. And then I went and just remembered how important it was to connect with my community. And that being our founders, and there's something different too about, people in Tacoma. And so getting to be with a group of tech people, and it was hosted by the Maritime Blue Incubator. It's special in Tacoma, but I think the point is that you never know who you're going to meet at those events. And it's not just, I think that some founders think, oh, I'm going to go network and I'm going to meet the next investor for my company. But like, in reality, customers are just important. Advocates are just as important.
You might meet your next employee, next advocate.
100%.
Yeah. So one track I do for for being an introvert, like closing event starts at 7:00. If I get at 7:10, I shouldn't even go, right? Because I'm done. What I do, I'll get like 15 minutes early, and people walk the door. I introduce myself. They walk through the door. That's my trick. Yeah. So what happened to Startup 253? I know like they were doing it for a while. It's like they disappeared off the stage.
Yeah, so that was, I think it's sort of been, it has transitioned, it has been sort of quietly there, and there's a Slack community. If you're not in that, get you added to that. And, it was being championed by Lee Reeves, who's a great advocate of the startup community here in Seattle. And he's worked for a couple different programs here where his role has been to help support founders and startups. And I know he was sort of got it kicked off, and then pandemic, and so it has really been taken up now by this guy Ston, who I had met at many other Seattle events, and at Tacoma events, and as I said, just such a champion. So I think there's a rebuilding of that.
Yeah, I think coming back. I think Tacoma's definitely underrated. I don't think people realize all the colleges down there, all the talent down there. It's a lot down there, right?
There is.
So Laura, what kind of talk? Can you give us any wisdom or advice or anything you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think that for me, the biggest advice, and this is coming, I think this is good timing. I think this is advice that is actually just being echoed right now, but I would have sort of said it anyways, right? Is that your business has to be sustainable. You have to create a business that will make money, that has customers, right? That, like, I think that we sort of lost track in this frothy market of the fundamentals of business. And it was really easy to think, because we've seen so many unprofitable unicorn companies, right, that just lose hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's really easy to think like growth at all costs. And that is not going to work anymore. And it probably shouldn't have been working all this time. And so I think the biggest thing for me is that anybody on this journey right now needs to don't be thinking about how you can raise and when you can raise and optimizing for a raise in investors. Optimize for a good, solid business. You only want to have to count on yourself.
Laura, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jason.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.